Unmask here, and welcome back to the color pencil tutorial. Yesterday we started this project and we just laid down two colors, sort of separating the lights from the shadows. Today we're going to start bridging the gap between the lights and the shadows a little bit by working in some of our gradients. I did grab my black colored pencil just in case I get to that point where I'm going to be darkening the shadows a little bit more. But for now, I'm going to start back up with the 1082 color, and I'm going to be working in some of the variations in the lights. So I'll be working mostly in adding some of the details that exist and creating a little bit more of the form of the face, but working just in the light areas. Hey there, CC, Cherry, Diane, Susan, Claire, Rain, good to see all of you. So let's just go ahead and jump into this. I think I'm going to begin with the eyes, kind of focus on those a little bit. Just into it. So I want to get some of the form, like I said, so a bit more stretching this color into and over top of that lighter color that I added yesterday. And as usual, any questions are always welcome, and I'll do my best to give you good answers. I just want to make sure that everybody knows that I'm not adding the texture into the skin yet. So even though it may appear in some instances where I'm drawing like hard lines, that is not the case. I'm not focused on any of the minute texture of his skin yet. I'm focused still on just the values, and you'll start to see how the values give his face more depth as I continue to add layers here. So here, this part where it sort of has the hard line, this color fades into the rest of the face. So now my goal is to sort of erase this previously created line, soften that transition between this color and oh, hey there, Helen. Good to see you. And Marcy. Hope everyone is having a good week so far. Today is Poland's Independence Day, so my wife has today off. We're going to be making some delicious pierogi after finish today's live stream. I may finish today off by using some solvent to blend these colors, because I should have quite a bit of pigment on the paper, and that will help sort of establish the foundation that can build up on more. Hey there, Linda. Good to see you. Quite a bit of texture right in this area. I want to make the, anytime you're dealing with wrinkles in faces, whether it's an older face or a younger face, uh, it's always advisable to make the wrinkles very, very shallow and only deepen them when you need to later on. So even though some of these wrinkles in the face here are quite obvious and dark, it's better to just sort of map them out initially and then add those darker values later on. Because making them less dark is going to be extremely difficult, if not impossible, depending on how dark you actually go. Yes, this is the same color from yesterday. This is the 1082. So I have not added any additional colors, although I do have my black pencil, which I may get to using later in today's live stream. Not currently right now. So you can start to see some of the features of his skin now. I've been incorporating a little bit of variation. Continue to do this all across the face. The features of these hard lines soften. Essentially, that's what needs to happen, is all of these hard lines that I created soft, no longer stand out so distinctly. Oh, hey there, Chandri. Yes, depth is created with contrast, because the illusion that takes place is that darker colors tend to feel further away. And that's the secret of creating depth, or a better term is form, creating the form, and that form is the representation of a three-dimensional object on a two-dimensional surface. And the form and the light cannot be separated because it is the illusion of light that you create with values that create the form, or as you put it, the depth, which is really just a better, or is just a different way of saying form. Because you want things to feel further and closer to you. A value is the most important feature of your artwork. So it's very, very important to keep that in the forefront of your mind as you're working, and focus on capturing the values accurately. Which is why it's really good to have a look at your reference photos and even your own artwork in black and white. So if you're struggling with creating good contrast and dark values, then what you can do is you can take a picture of your artwork and then turn it black and white, and that will help you sort of determine where you need to make adjustments with your values. And no, I'm not working on pastel matte. No need to use cap locks in chat because it doesn't actually help me see the questions any easier. The only thing that helps me see questions easier is looking at chat, because sometimes I tend to forget to look at chat. You can also tag me in your questions. Hey there, Edouard and Rare. See ya. The paper that I'm using is Strathmore Multimedia. Actually changed it up last second preparing this project. I think most of you may have assumed that I was using the Lennox 100. It's very similar. They're very, very similar papers. But I changed it up last minute because I was testing this paper last week with just doing a quick scribble on it, and I sort of liked the way that it was working out, but wasn't totally sure. And so I wanted to go ahead and give it a try here on this project. are. It's, I would say, it's a bit different than the toned gray. I also, well, I don't currently have any of the toned gray version of this paper, which is a really, really great paper. And you wouldn't think too much that, oh, the paper's white or the paper's gray and it works completely different, but it actually feels like it does. The toned gray version of this paper, it does actually feel very different. This one, I don't know what it is. This one just doesn't seem to want to cover the uh, the small dots as well as the toned gray, but I wanted to give it a try with this project. So here we are. I think I've only used this paper like 2 other times. Uh, do I use the paper to place it below your hand so that the colors won't smudge? No, I don't. I don't concern myself with that. There is no colors to smudge right now, and most of the time I'll anchor my hand off to the side. Colored pencil colors don't really smudge that much anyway, but you do want to keep your hand off of it because of the oils skin. They will prevent the colored pencils from sticking to the paper. You don't want that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about the white, Diane, to be honest with you. Yeah, if you've been considering getting the toned gray, I would say just test out the toned gray for now and leave leave the white out of it. I just don't feel like it works as the same. The features of the toned gray sort of just, maybe it's the way that they create the color of the paper, but I feel like it sort of lowers the tooth a little bit without actually removing the capability of doing a lot of layers, which is sort of something you wouldn't expect. I wouldn't really expect that if I have a smoother paper that I'd be able to do more layers. But with the toned gray, it just feels better. It just feels better to work on that paper than it does the regular old plain white here. And I think I only got the white one because I was curious if it worked the same. And generally, I like to steer clear of the toned papers for the tutorials because um, the process of working on toned paper is slightly different than working on just, simply because it can work in two directions. And where I would be white pencil on a toned paper, I would not be using a white pencil on a white paper. And so it forces people to have those those other colors paper, and I just don't want to do that to people. I don't want it to be necessary that you have a bunch of different papers, supplies, and stuff like that. but I'll probably end up sticking to the Lennox paper foreseeable future. I don't know. Sometimes it just takes, a few attempts on a paper to sort of get a feel of it and see where a potential adjustment can be made to make the paper work the way that you want it to. And then I haven't yet, but I want to test this paper polychrome because that's actually what I've been trying to find a paper placement for because the Stonehenge vellum paper isn't available as far as I can see anymore for me. And that paper worked perfectly with the polychromos. Yeah, yeah, it is. It is starting to come to life a little bit. It's you get those two separate sources of light really in just about anything. The shadows and the shadow side and the light side. And things really can come to life quite quickly. And it will start to appear even more lifelike once I expand that contrast even more. And then in addition to that, like adding more color variation. Bit of orange, I would say, is probably going to be a rather important color in this gentleman's skin tone. Orange is very, very important. That's actually why I chose this particular brown, because this brown has an orange to it. You can actually see how mixing this yellow and this brown, it sort of creates this orange tone, which mixes really nicely. Well, thank you, Leonardo. I really appreciate that. Can you see the replay of this live stream later? You can, but only if you join the Unmask Art Club, which is on my website. I have the link in the description. All of these tutorials that I live stream are art club projects. And I do the live streams publicly now, but the catalog of live streams is only on my website and they can only be accessed from my. You're putting very light layers of pencil down and not sure if I'm putting enough down. I would say for what I did yesterday of this project, I didn't put light layers of that color down. I I simply put the color down on the paper, just a nice, smooth, consistent layer. There was no extra light touch or anything like that. It was just the flat color covering the paper, but not like grinding it in to 100% cover the paper. You know what I mean? It was just sort of very bland standard layer of the color in those two separate areas, and that's really it. So um, if you feel like you're not putting enough down, you probably aren't putting enough down. And I would say just um, try to ignore the fact that you're doing a portrait, ignore the fact that you're working on skin, apply the color the way that I'm doing it. Don't get too caught up in what it is that you're drawing, because then you're going to start feeling that intimidation. You're going to be thinking, I'm working on skin, I need to make it look like skin. This is a portrait, I need to make it look like a portrait. Those things need to be outside of your mind during this phase of the drawing, because it's difficult to overcome color fear. So don't even introduce to your consciousness that you're doing a portrait or that you're working on skin. Because what I've done up to this point, I did a flat color here, a flat color here, using the same color that I put here. I'm now just starting to create a little bit of form. I'm not focused on like the skin color. I'm not focused on anything except the form at this point. This guy is just a random person. I have no idea who he is. Um, I just looked at some portraits of people, and I was looking for something that looked fun. I just looked for something that looked like it would be fun to do and had some nice colors and had some good lighting to it and just looked interesting. So um, he's definitely not from the early 1900s, because this is a recent photograph of just a person with a goofy mustache. An impressive mustache, but still rather goofy. He looks like one of those guys that would be in a mustache competition. Um, are expensive materials always better? No, I would I would say no. Although with most things, with most products, there is a balance between cost and quality. Uh, Generally, as the price goes up, there is a quality benefit that you will find. Art supplies certainly fall in that same category of product that would generally increase in quality as the price goes up. But um, there's also there's also products that aren't the highest cost product that are still very much quality. And I think Prismacolors is a perfect example. I know that in some areas of the world, Prismacolor feels very expensive, but for a majority of the world, Prismacolors are quite affordable for such quality products. And simultaneously, there's also people that will argue that Prismacolors are not quality products. Um, and I would respectfully disagree with that opinion. I think Prismacolors are a great pencil, working from beginner all the way up to advanced, and really not necessary to purchase any other pencils until you feel like you can afford it and you just want to explore what else is out there. Always afraid to color your drawings because you feel like you're going to mess it up. Um, yeah, that's certainly a fear a lot of people can relate to. Oh, hey there, John. Appreciate that. So when it comes to getting into introducing color into your work and overcoming a bit of the fear associated with doing that, because I can relate. Being when I was new to color, it it's a lot to digest. Color is a whole nother monster to learn and understand. Um, and what I would recommend is working with just a few colors, because I actually have a sketchbook where I started introducing colors to just sort of build my confidence with, until until I felt confident enough to do a portrait. Really, that's sort of what it came down to. But um, I felt super super uncomfortable trying or attempting to try a portrait with colored pencils for a very long time. And what I would color instead is still life. Still life is a very very good subject to practice color, because you can just like sketch an apple and then start to color it and build your confidence with color that way. Because the color accuracy that you need with things like apples or potatoes or some kind of little figurine, any still life object that you can introduce color to, you don't really need to be that accurate with your colors there. Um, you can simply just focus on capturing the object the way it appears and your values. And by doing that, you'll build up your confidence working with color, working with like mixing colored pencils. That's also another thing that a lot of people struggle with is layering and mixing, creating gradients and all of that with colored pencils. It sort of seems like an impossible task at first, but everything can be broken down into relatively simple steps. And that's what I like to do with my projects is I like to break them down so that you don't have to be a professional to create it. You just have to be patient because that's where it's all going to come down to in the end is you just need to be patient. And so if you're looking to start introducing color to your drawings, I do have an intro to colored pencil course that I take you through a lot of the very foundational techniques and thought process of introducing color to your work. But the other thing that's really important with color, and I've been talking about it a lot this week, is not using too many colors because way too often people try to use like the full 150 pencils in a single eyeball of a portrait or something, and it's really really unnecessary. And so minimizing the amount of colors that you use is also very helpful to add color to stuff without outside the bounds of your capabilities. So if you're working with 5 colors, you're going to be a lot more successful than if you're trying to juggle 25, 26 colors. And even 25, 26 colors, it doesn't sound like a lot. Like it doesn't really sound like that's enough colors to create something. But the most colors I've ever used in a single project, I want to say was 19. And that was like pushing it as far as I could with the number of colors that I had. It at the end of it, it probably wasn't even necessary to use those 19 colors, but I would say generally I use about 14, only 14 pencils, and that often includes black and white as well. And we did several projects in the art club not too long ago, in fact, where we used the 12 pack of Prismacolor or Polychromos. Polychromos. We used 12 pack of Polychromos, and um, the thing is, with 12 colors, you have a lot. You have a lot of colors. 132 distinct colors. What is my opinion of using graphite paper? There's no such thing as graphite paper, unless you're referring to transfer paper that uses graphite to transfer. Yeah, yeah. I'm glad that that helped out Susan. But yeah, that so there's just a example in chat. Wasn't sure what I was referring to. Um, just one opinion of how well that sort of mini series of minimum color palette helped out. Because when you limit the number of colors that you need to balance in your art, you can focus on the actual important techniques like layering, blending, creating gradients, adding texture. Those are the those are the things that are more important than your color range. Okay, so you were talking about transfer paper. Um, I'm not a huge fan of transfer paper. I prefer to use backtracing. The thing with most transfer papers is that I feel like they transfer too dark, and they're often carbon based, which is very, pretty much the same thing of graphite pencils. And the issue that I have with them being too dark is that they don't like to erase as well as just regular old graphite. And so I like the backtracing method a lot more. It's, that's where um, I just scribble graphite onto the back. I've just not had much success getting the carbon papers to erase. And even though I just barely press the pencil into them to make the actual transfer, it still feels like it's too dark most of the time. So wouldn't mind trying a limited palette project again. And I think for the next colored pencil project we are going to. So we'll use the 12 pack of polychromos to do a still life, I think. That's what I think that's a good idea. Because I also like the idea of doing a limited palette once more. Well, this is about as far as I can take this color. Doing another quick layer on the nose here. And then I'm going to use the light color. So I'll switch to the 140. And I'm just going to go back over these transitions that I made. I'm just going to go right back over them. And I'm going to work this color sort of going back and forth over these edges here. So I'm going to bring this color into the darker color a little bit, as well as using it to sort of further smooth out the layer of the skin where I added the darker chocolate color. Yes, I've done several portraits with pastels in the art club projects. If you want to check out all of the projects, I have about 100 projects that I've done that are on the art club. You do not have to be a member of the art club to see what the projects are. So you can go over to my website, go to the tutorials, and scroll through and see what the projects look like, see what the projects actually are. You just have to be a member to click on the project and view the contents of it. But if you want to see what I offer, by all means, go ahead. Because I have, like I said, about 100. I haven't counted them, but there's quite a few. And if you consider that the last project that we finished, the Thomas Kincaid project, that took about 17 hours. So if you were to start right now, probably not be able to finish every single projects, even if you tried to in a year, because there's a number of projects that are well over 10 and some that are probably even over 20 hours long. And I live stream every pencil stroke. So you're not going to miss anything off stream. Everything has been live streamed, every detail has been explained of every single project. And not to mention that, all of the questions that you guys ask me about, supplies and pencils and commissions and quite literally everything you could ever want to ask me has been asked before. It's rather rare that I get a new question that I've never answered at this stage. Well, I've answered all of those questions throughout the number of projects that I have on my website. And so, beyond getting walked through all of those projects, you also just get a huge library of just endless potential questions that have been asked before, explaining explaining more than I could ever go into detail right now about. Is this the first video of this tutorial on YouTube? No, this is part two. Part one is on my website in the art club. I don't use Patreon. Can I make an FAQ of all of those on your site? No way. No way. That would be a huge undertaking. Um, it's a good idea, but going back through the hundreds of hours to try to find even a 10 questions would just be way outside my interest. It is a wonderful idea for sure, though. Yeah. If anyone wants to elect doing that, uh, I'd be happy to pay you to do it, but don't expect too much. I don't make, I don't, I don't make a ton of money, so sometimes I feel overwhelmed with the amount that I stream now. I know that there's people out there that stream like 8, 10, 12 hours every day. But I can assure you they're not streaming art. Um, there's just no way. There's just no way that you can do this, have this much concentration for as long as I do it. Because at least for me, it is exhausting to sort of stretch my attention span as far as I can with trying to create art first, then also explaining it, and then also trying to keep up with chat and answer questions and all. Yeah, yeah, I have been seeing the same names in the live streams for many years, CC, and it is quite amazing that I'm able to interest somebody so much that they do watch my live streams as often as some of you do, because I never once found myself that interesting or thought of myself as being that interesting. You can do it for $0. No, I wouldn't be able to live with myself if you just did it for free. Man. And honestly, I don't even know how I would organize like you going through and finding questions and getting my answers or whatever. It would just it would be too much to ask somebody to do that for free. Anyways, look at this guy coming to life with two colors. Yeah, I told you you don't need a lot of colors. I'm actually half tempted to leave it like this because I kind of like the style. It's sort of almost like cut out kind of look. It looks kind of cool like this actually. I just imagine how much cooler it's going to look once I start introducing other colors. You're pretty awesome too, Cece. I love hanging out with you, and I'm glad that you enjoy my live streams as well. It's nice to have a sister that thinks you're awesome. It's nice to have people in general think you're awesome. All of you are quite awesome as well, and I appreciate you more than just your support. Your support is just an added benefit to your friendship. That's the most rewarding part because I've never cared about money. If I cared about money, I would probably act quite differently on YouTube, but I can't. I could never bring myself to act the way the real money makers on YouTube act. I have far too much integrity for that. I don't think I'd make a very good actor either, so. Alrighty, well, I think I'm gonna add in a little bit of black. So this is black, and I'm going to start increasing the value range here a little bit. I guess I'll start over here with the no reason at all, just kind of stuck out to me to start with the ear, so yeah. And I'm going to do a really, really light layer of black. And then I'm going to use solvent to sort of blend everything together. Yeah, Helen, I think you are right. Considering the amount that I live stream now for the art club, um, it's significantly cheaper than it was on Patreon. Because Patreon, I only did one live stream a week, and then I moved it up to two. So I did two live streams a week. But once I started the art club, started doing more live streams. So essentially doubling the doubling the streaming amount while only increasing the price. Well, technically only increasing the price by $20 a year. Which is 1/3. So double the content for an additional 1/3 of the price. So yeah, I sort of probably sold myself a little bit too cheap there. I'm just kidding. I was, like I said, I was never in it for the money, so only ever cared about making enough to support what I do and squirrel a little bit away for my inevitable retirement. And by retirement, I don't mean that I'm going to quit doing art or even YouTube. I'll probably stick doing YouTube for a very, very long time because I enjoy it so much. I enjoy the community that I've been able to be a part of. I enjoy, making videos and talking with people. I enjoy editing. I enjoy creating content. I don't like that word though. I don't like to describe what I make as content. It just feels undervalued with that description. I don't like that. It feels very doesn't feel like what I make. I don't feel like I make content. I think I'll just call it art. Calling it content just feels way too sterile, and it just feels wrong to describe it as that. Oh, hey there, Lisa. Good to see you. Curriculum. That's a interesting way of describing it too. I forget who it was earlier asking about, well, not necessarily asking, but talking about how they're intimidated by adding color to their drawings because they don't want to mess it up. If you're still in chat, I can't remember who it was that asked that or mentioned it. I've used three colors now that I've introduced black, but ask yourself, would you be pleased with this? Would you would you be satisfied if you were able to create this out of your drawing? If you had your drawing and then you added three colors? Because look at what you can do with three colors. I I actually like this a lot. I kind of like these three colors a lot. Um, I don't know if I've ever used these three exact colors, but I really like the way it creates the portrait. Even if I don't add any other colors, I sort of like it. It feels aged. For some reason, it just these three colors they just sort of make this picture look and feel older than it is. The reference photo is in the Art Club project. So when you have access to the Art Club, you have access to the reference photo. I never have it set up where the reference photo is alongside the live stream. I do that for two reasons, by the way. Never, never having the reference photo during the live stream. The first reason is because you get a false judgment based off of what you perceive the reference photo to be and then the drawing. You put those two side by side from the perspective of a viewer, and the viewer will just automatically have a more critical eye as to what the drawing appears, which isn't the purpose of art. The purpose is not uh, judgment based off of how close it looks like to the reference photo. The judgment should always be the what the artwork appears to you, just in a vacuum, essentially. My wife does that a lot too to me as well. Is I'll finish a project or something, and be like, hey, I finished this, and then she reserves her opinion until I show her the reference photo. Take care, Helen. Yes, yes, this is only three colors. Only three colors. Go ahead and some strong values. Oh, sorry. Drawing with my left hand, I lean into the paper a bit more. I didn't mean to have you staring at the back of my head. Using my left hand has given you more sense of the lightness of my touch. It's been fun so far. You know, like I said, it's been maybe 4 or 5 years since I've done a whole project left-handed. Um, there is one portrait. There's one portrait that I did. Might have been, yeah, it might have been 2015. Yeah, it could have been 2015 that I did. I used both hands simultaneously to do the portrait. That was a fun project. You have to go back sometime, but if you search subscriber portrait, I think maybe it's like the fourth or fifth subscriber portrait that I did, and I drew it with both hands simultaneously, working in two different areas. It was kind of fun. And then if you go back even further than that, you can find the painting. A couple paintings actually. With colored pencils and pastels, I never get like hand fatigue. So I almost never switch hands in the middle of a project because it's usually so relaxing that my hand or arm doesn't get tired. But that's not the case when I paint. When I paint, generally I'm always holding my arm off of the surface. So, like my shoulder or elbow area will get a little fatigued after an hour or so, and I'll just want to like rest my arm or hand. And that's usually when I will switch and start using my my other hand. Oh, that's funny, Dottie. I'm not too familiar with root beer ads, but I can get that. I get that vibe. You know who this guy actually reminds me of is that old guy from the diabetes commercial that always pronounced it diabetes. He's always standing in front of the fireplace. Uh, a Family Guy would always make fun of that commercial. That one, that's what it sort of reminds me of a little bit. He has that face. Obviously, the mustache is totally different, but that makes me laugh. It always bothered me the way he pronounced diabetes. And then it makes me think of the Family Guy episodes where they're like they're showing the animated version of the commercial. He's like, I have diabetes, and last night I hit my wife. And then I realized my wife died 5 years ago. Who did I hit? It's just uh that's that's what it reminds me of. Wilford Brimley. Wow, you guys know the name? I didn't. Yeah, I didn't know he was like famous in that way. So famous, you guys know. Okie dokie. I'm gonna switch back to the 1082 color. I want to go a little bit darker. Some of these areas on his neck, um, they're just way too bright. Need to be blended in a little bit better. And then also, sort of this part here is quite a bit darker. So do another quick layer here. Hello, Block Mango. How does Stonehenge compare to the Lennox 100? Um, I would, oddly enough, I'd actually say that the Lennox 100 paper to the touch has more texture. Um, but there's just there's just something about the multimedia paper here that it feels like I can't quite fill in the gaps of the paper as well like the Lennox. The Lennox just sort of feels like the gaps that it has are easier to get the pigment into to get a smoother, more consistent coverage. However, I would not say that's the case with the toned gray version of this paper. The toned gray version of this paper is like the same as the Lennox 100. They're very compatible. Yeah, they're very compatible papers at the end of the day. I'm gonna have to order some of the toned gray version of this paper because I don't think I have another piece of it. I was thinking I had one more, but I think I used it a while ago. I actually forgot that I had this paper completely, and I found it last week and did a did a quick experiment on it that I was not satisfied at all with, and so I just threw it in my drawer and forgot about it. Okie dokie. I am going to grab my solvent now. Thinking back, I don't think I have ever once used solvent with. I don't know if I've ever blended anything with solvent with left hand. Start in the light colors first. Actually, always double check, make sure that your paintbrush is not contaminated with other. Okay, it's good. So I'm going to blend this out, and that will be it for the day. This will also help some of those transitions a bit. I'm going to focus in the light colors first. I think next Wednesday, when I pick this project back up, I'm probably going to focus just on the eyes. So I'll introduce a few colors to get his blue eyes put in. Usually when I do portraits, I actually start with the eyes, but I'm sort of experimenting with this project here, process that I'm using. Because sometimes, I don't know, if I focus on just the eyes for the first part, it's not as easy to follow along for other people. My normal process of doing portraits, I don't feel is the way I should teach to do portraits. I feel like I should focus more on the qualities that make a good portrait, and that's the form of the portrait itself, the face, and the values. The eyes are important, but they're easy to come back to. When I judge my own work, what are some of the components of the piece that cause you to not like it, be not satisfied? When I judge my work, half the time I'm not really looking at it as what the finished piece looks like. A lot of my judgment for my own work comes from how I worked through it. So, uh, did I lose my patience? If I did, then it's almost guaranteed that I don't like it, because that's a reality that still exists for me. Is that it's my patience with project, um, and although that doesn't happen too often, um, I almost will immediately not like whatever it is. Another quality is if I unconsciously get stuck in like a tunnel vision on the project, and it's not completely obvious until after I've already called it done. And what I mean by that is, sometimes even in the midst of taking the week off after doing 2 sessions of a project, it's nice to take a break from your work and get fresh eyes and come back to it. Even sometimes that's not enough for me, and I still sort of underperform what I would otherwise want to. That can be with not getting the values the way that I would have liked to get them, or subtly rushing past a certain stage or making some other kind of minor mistake. Really at really at this point, it's the small minor mistakes that really get to me because that's the thing that I need to correct in my own work. I'm not making big mistakes that I would have made 10 years ago. I'm making much more smaller, oftentimes invisible mistakes that sometimes I visualize a good composition, I lay it out, and then, you know, finishing up the project, I'm like, I don't like the composition or something along those lines. It's always small stuff. So I can't really say there's one. It's just, it varies, you know. That's a good question. Do I play guitar left handed? No, I don't. I have flipped the guitar around similar to how Jimi Hendrix did and played, fiddled around with playing guitar left handed, but I would never try to write something. My left hand doesn't like to pick the guitar. I think there's some things that I probably just won't ever do left-handed. Playing guitar is one of. I bowl. Um, I switch when I bowl. I bowl left-handed and right-handed. Actually, kind of funny. I didn't really think about it before, but I have I have this friend, my wife's best friend from childhood. She, her and her husband live um, on the west border, the Polish-German border, and every once in a while they come into town to visit their parents, who actually live right next to us in a different building. And nearly every time they come visit, Uba and I go bowling. And I'm not a bowler. Like I don't do it on a regular basis. I'm pretty trash. Um, and we sort of have this ongoing competition, Kuba and I, because we're like dead even in bowling skill. And so when we go, we play for an hour. We usually get about four, maybe five games in, and um, bowling. Gosh, I my fingers get wrecked when I go bowling, and I don't like it. So for the for the first two games, I always bowl with my right hand, and then for the last two games, I always bowl with my left hand. And I get higher scores sometimes with after I switch to my left hand, but it's pretty even. I did the score is pretty much the same. I usually get around like 120 when I bowl, which I know is a garbage score, but I only ever bowl when Uba comes to town, so maybe twice, three times a year. Uh, but yeah, I still get the same score when I switch hands, and I still beat him switching hands. No big difference there. Doing studies, you never understood what doing a study is when it comes to art. A study is just practice. It just means practice. Yeah, I think it means different things to different people. Um, for me, it usually refers to something along the lines of like a technique or um, sort of just building a deeper understanding of what it is you're doing. So, establishing light, it could be sort of playing around with different values or whatnot and trying different things in that way. There's not like one thing. It could be because you could do a drawing study where you practice hands. It could be, but at the end of the day, it just means practice. At least to me, anyway. Using the grid considered cheating? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Anybody that says that has lost their mind. There's no such thing as cheating in art. It doesn't exist because in cheating implies competition. Period. Cheating implies competition, and there is no competition in art. It does not exist. I don't care what anybody says. There are art competitions, which are judged completely subjectively. That's perfectly fine, but art itself is not and will never be a competition. So there's no such thing as cheating. Um, that's going to be it for the today, by the way. Uh, I am gonna have to wait for that to dry anyway, but let me zoom out to standard. Um, that's three colors. That's only three colors. So um, excluding a bit of like pinks and oranges to get the skin looking, I guess, more realistic if that's your goal. But I think that anybody can do that right there with with very little effort. I could probably take anybody off the street with no experience, set them down, and they could produce that right there. I think a lot of people would be very pleased with that if they could do it. Um, so just just one more example of how just a few colors can go a long way, and and just a little bit of technique, minuscule amount of technique. Um, so, anyways, I hope that you guys enjoyed today's live stream. I will be back on Monday for the continuation of the pastel project. And so I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week and a great weekend. And I will see you next time. Take care. Peace.